The topic of today, the theme, is about this idea of learning partnerships and how we can explore ways to strengthen learning, build networks, and evolve our institutions to be fit for purpose for today and in the future. We'll say more about what all that means, but I'll just introduce me. So Alex Neuman, I call myself a learning designer and facilitator. I work with people and organizations, both companies and governmental organizations and also educational institutions, to help them grow and transform. And a bit about sort of my background, where I come from. So I am Canadian by origin, but I've been living for the past 10 years in Sweden and now Denmark. So a connection from some different cultures. At the moment, I'm actually not working. Mostly, I'm on parental leave with my 1-year-old son. So most of my days are not spent in front of the computer. They're spent maybe on the cargo bike, going around in Copenhagen where I live, playgrounds and groceries and so on. But in my work life, I work as an independent consultant these days mostly, and my biggest focuses at the moment are working with 2 big organizations. So one is a big company called Oatly that maybe you've heard of. They make oat milk, helping them with leadership development, organizational culture, and transformation. I also work with the Swedish Institute, working with a range of leadership programs, a bunch of them focused on the MENA and also South Asia and Eastern European regions. My background, before that, I'm a co-founder of an organization called CoLearn, which is about helping organizations modernize the way they work with learning and people development. And before that, I worked for a design, technology, and business school, a vocational training school called Hyper Island, which is based in Sweden. And I worked there for quite some years. And actually, a lot of what I'm going to speak about today in terms of learning partnerships and sort of bringing together the spheres of education and outside actors and creating meaningful partnerships comes from my work with Hyper Island. That's what I'll be drawing on a lot with some of the examples and so on. Okay, you have a little bit of context for who I am, where I'm coming from. Let's dig into today. We're going to be together for, it's going to be 1.5 to 2 hours. So we have, as much as 2 hours. We might not use all that time. We will see. And the idea, the hope is that we'll have a really good exploration of how to strengthen learning networks and institutional evolution through this idea of learning partnerships. My hope of what you'll leave with are some new insights, some useful ideas, and maybe a spark of motivation to go and experiment in new ways with learning partnerships. I suspect you already do this, work with this in some way, so maybe you'll get a new insight and a spark to try something new from this session. A few important things before we dig into it all, kind of guidelines or requests for how you can make the most of this session. I really invite you to be as here and now as possible. I know that when we work online, it's easy to get distracted, to have your inbox open, to be, one eye here, one eye there. This is the sort of session where the more you're able to step in, the more you'll take away. So please, do your best to bring your focus in, and I'll do my best to make it engaging and keep you, in the flow. We'll have a bunch of conversation, and I just invite you to be curious and enjoy the conversations, make the most of the time to explore, reflect, have good dialogue. You've chosen to be here, I hope, because that's the sort of thing you want to do, and make the most of the time. And I like to say this, when stepping in, this idea that, I, Alex, as the session leader, the lecturer today, I don't know better. but I might know different. So I'm, in no way do I want to propose that I have, the way to do things, the golden truth, the answer to learning partnerships. I have perspectives and experiences, and so do you. So, I step in with the spirit, and I invite you to do the same as you, explore together with us. Good. I can see a few people have joined in the meantime, so welcome, and we'll bring you in as we go. All right, that's some intro from me. You have an idea of where we're going, what we're going to do with this time. I want to do a little quick exercise of checking in to invite each of you also to sort of fully step in and be here. So I want to ask you to think about for a moment and then write in the chat window in Teams a word or a sentence about what made you curious to join today's session. What made you curious to join today's session? Why did you choose to be here? So take a moment on that prompt and then write a word or a few words in the chat. And into this idea to talk about the headline of the session, learning partnerships. And as I think I alluded to, I'm going to offer some perspectives, some ideas, some experiences from my own background, and there are certainly more than that. So I'm going to give, some input. I'm not going to do a lot of lecturing, but hopefully rather give us some good frames and prompts to explore and discuss, and do some very practical thinking about how you in your context can work with learning partnerships. So a few familiar questions. So in my experience working with educational institutions of all kinds, ranging from universities to vocational training institutions, even secondary school level. A few familiar questions, sort of challenges that that come up that are alive in the minds of educators, administrators. Some of the familiar challenges, maybe. How do we keep our curriculum relevant and up to date? How do we help our students be prepared for the real world, to move out beyond the institution when they graduate and move forward? How do we ensure our educational approach, our pedagogy, is contemporary and evolving and fit for purpose? How do we make sure we're not too siloed or insular, inward looking? How do we stay relevant as an institution now and in the future? So I think a lot of these speak to, a world that is, outside of the institutional walls, that is transforming and changing, different kinds of pressures that are there, and questions that are hopefully, exciting and motivating questions, but also ones with some urgency. And I think these are questions, that I'm using as a way in to talk about learning partnerships as an opportunity, as an approach, to hopefully have some answers to those challenges. So, okay, what are we talking about when we're talking about a learning partnership? A pretty broad definition, but giving some frames here. I'm going to use this headline as to refer to a collaboration of any kind between a school of any kind and an outside actor. That could be a business, an NGO, a governmental institution, a startup, any kind of outside actor, but that strengthens somehow student learning and creates meaningful value for the partners involved. And learning partnerships is the term I'm going to use. I guess there, we could call it different things. I'm not attached to any of the language, but learning partnerships will be our headline. And what can this look like? So this can take lots of shapes and sizes, but I'm going to try to give some examples and some ways of thinking about this. And again, I'll draw a bit on my experience, but learning partnerships could be, for example, things like student projects where an outside organization gives a brief, frames a challenge for students or groups of students. It could be at the level of curriculum development, so having workshops with groups from the industry, or having a steering committee that helps oversee the updating of program curricula. So having, you know, folks from the field, from the industry, hands-on involved with the shaping the education. It could have to do with industry placements, so having internships, apprenticeships, these sorts of placements in relevant organizations in the field connected to a given program. It could be connected to mentorship, so pairing up students either individually or sometimes even in groups with experts, specialists who can act as mentors, and sometimes the other way around as well, or rather mentorship can kind of be a two-way mutually beneficial kind of relationship. It could be connected to assessment, so bringing in industry specialists to work with assessment, and I think that's most interesting when we think about assessment in terms of formative assessment, which is really rich in feedback and helping give, you know, really useful, valuable feedback to students in their work. Of course, in lecturing and teaching, having specialists from the industry come in to be lecturers, to teach, or even to help shape modules or programs, and indeed co-lead them. Or other forms of co-creation, initiatives that are co-created, spaces that are co-created between outside actors and schools. So that's a little starting point. Now, why spend energy and time, you know, working with this type of approach, creating partnerships of this kind? And I think some of those questions on that earlier slide probably hint at this, but 3 ideas about, you know, why I think these are such a powerful tool for both student learning, but also other aspects. So the first one is real world readiness, and that gets to that question of how do we support our students and make sure that they are really going to thrive when they leave the institution and move into their life afterwards. How can we make sure that they are able to step into careers and do well and have the skills and competences and so on that they need? Community and network building, so getting out of the, you know, those silos and creating meaningful linkages between educational institutions and the, you know, those other actors, community groups, businesses, and so on. I think this kind of, you know, approach of having those strong connections is, you know, a much more contemporary 21st century way to work than, you know, the silos where these organizations exist totally separately. And innovation and co-creating the future. I think just there's a lot of potential for, you know, evolving the, you know, our institutions, but also creating, you know, exciting possibilities, exciting, you know, pillars of the future through these kinds of partnerships. Okay. I'm going to speak a little bit more and then about what it can look like, and then actually pretty soon I'm going to invite you in to reflect a little bit and kind of maybe try to connect back to your own context. I just make sure. Yes, great. I'm not seeing the chat continuously, but I will sort of bring it up every so often. And if you have a question or a reflection, I wanted to say that earlier. Let's use the meeting chat as a way to do that ongoing. So just an invitation. So I want to offer 6 examples. I started alluding to this a moment ago, but what can it look like? And I'll just give 6 examples, 6 sort of ways that these learning partnerships can look. Think of these as sort of prompts, open-ended kind of opportunities or possibilities. And as I describe each of these and talk a little bit about how I've worked with them, kind of keep your own context in mind, your own role in mind, your own challenges and institutional pain points in mind, because that's where we're going to go next, is to sort of invite you to dig in and say, okay, what could the opportunities be in my context? Okay. So it can look like developing curriculum together. So how, to bring together cross-section of industry field experts to help shape curriculum. In my experience, and actually most recently, I've been working with the Estonian Academy of Arts, organizing a series of industry workshops and roundtables, or rather not organizing, but kind of co-organizing and co-facilitating these sessions of, in this case, it was with the accessory design program. And not knowing the group that's here, I don't know if anyone here has maybe is from ECA or has been even involved in any of that, but that was a series, a process to help update and evolve the program curriculum for this accessory design program. And what they did was to bring together a series of experts, and these were everyone from people working in big companies to independent designers, to others working across the field. And we had this series of roundtables where, in a really structured way, we invited that group from the industry to give input on questions like, how has the industry changed and evolved over the past 10 years? What is the most important set of skills and competences that students will need over the next 5 years in the industry? And what could what might the type of program look like that would really set up the students to thrive as they go on into their careers? So that input then led to, a series of consolidated insights, which then led to, tangible, practical updates to the shape of the program and the curriculum itself. So that's one example. Back in time with when I was working at Hyper Island, the school I mentioned before, we did kind of a supersized version of an event like this every year, where we would bring together as many as 100 or more industry folks representing, a cross section that touched on different programs that the school was running, to do a big kind of one-day symposium, doing a very similar kind of process. Obviously, it takes a different shape when it's so big, but with the idea to try to capture valuable insights and ideas that would help shape the evolution of the programs. Now, of course, as I mentioned before, what that also does, this type of process, is it helps to build networks and build relationships and connections between those people in the industry and the institution, which can then pay off and have lots of different types of value. Okay, the next idea is that it can look like giving students real-world challenges. So there's all sorts of ways that organizations and outside actors can be involved in, preparing and framing real briefs or challenges for students to work on as learning projects. Now, the shape and nature of this will depend, of course, on the field and the type of study, but creating really practical learning by doing for students to get experience that is hands-on. Now, in my experience and back working at Hyper Island, one of the ways that we would do this would be to bring in organizations. Those programs were often either very technical in nature or very creative in nature. So it would be we had a program on digital data strategy on one hand and creative art direction on the other hand. So we would, for instance, bring in companies that had a relevant business challenge. We need to work on our creative strategy, or we need to work on our data management, right? And then invite those organizations to prepare briefs and become, in a sense, we would call them the client of the students that would then work toward that challenge and be given that as a project to work on. Now, that that's the nature of it in that kind of a program. Again, this can take lots of shapes and sizes, but that, that gives something really meaningful as experience to those students, and it also generates something really exciting and interesting for those partners. Now, that wasn't like commercial, then delivery. That wasn't, we always were careful not to make it that the students were working for free, but rather creating a learning setting where they could really experiment, try, fail, and have a really rich learning experience in the process. So another idea, another example. Create work experience opportunities. Now, this one I think is familiar, probably something that happens in lots of cases already. But I think this is an important piece of the puzzle, and making this something that is supported, that is structured, that is set up to really succeed. So, what kinds of internships, apprenticeships, placements within organizations that students take on as part of their studies. And I think here, what's often an important success criteria is that there is a good kind of structure and supporting systems to enable this to succeed. So whether that's about on the front end, making sure that those organizations and those roles are selected and organized either by the students or by the institutions in ways that are really intentional and the right kind of criteria are met. And then as those internships or apprenticeships kind of unfold, that there are support mechanisms like coaching or other types of check-ins with the students and potentially also with the organizations. But this kind of, again, connecting the learning experience, the programs of students with real world opportunities to learn on the job, so to speak, is, I think, a powerful form of a learning partnership that is worth exploring and also evolving how we work with. So inviting learning industry experts in to lead learning. And again, I think there's a familiar version of this, of having maybe folks in to be lecturing or teaching in a one-off capacity. And of course, that is, that can be a really effective strategy. But I think it can even go further than that in having industry experts taking on the role of, curating and facilitating or co-facilitating, a full module or section of a program. So, not only bringing in an expert to give a talk, but having folks in to co-create and lead, whole parts of programs. And I think this often can come downstream of curriculum development work, of that network building, where you can really identify who are those great partners, those great industry folks who can come in even more closely and work more alongside, and maybe have the interest, the motivation, the skills to be involved in co-leading, co-teaching in the context of programs themselves. Then there's industry experts involved in student feedback. So one of the things that can be really useful and rich for students is to have a diverse range of formative feedback from people that are in their industry. So as they do work, how can we think about how to bring in specialists to be involved in maybe not only teaching, but also as students are working and doing projects or outputting research or whatever it is. How can we widen the scope of where the feedback comes from and involve industry in that? And finally, mentorship, and potentially mentorship that goes both ways. So I think, of course, we can think about how could we involve industry folks as mentors for students, and the benefits of that are obvious. But something that I've worked with, and that was, I think, a big success when we would do that was when I was working at Hyper Island. We would do mentorship where we would really think of it as a relationship that was going both ways. So not only that industry experts were mentoring students, but that the students were, in a sense, acting as sort of reverse maybe mentors to those experts from the field, really, offering their perspective as someone, coming up into the next generation of the industry, and again working with structures and processes to make that not just, okay, here's a pair, here's you with you, now go off, but having guidelines and sessions where that was facilitated and supported. With that said, I want to invite you to explore a little bit, reflect on your context, and I'm going to give you a couple of reflection prompts to do that, and a couple of minutes just individually to go. And I see a couple of things coming up in the chat. I promise we'll come back to any questions, and if there are more, please just post them. But I'll go to this, and then we will come back around for any questions or reflections that you have. So I want to give you a couple minutes just individually, just in silence, get into your own space and reflect, and even make a few notes on these 3 prompts. And we're going to go into a little sharing and dialogue now. And what we'll do, we'll go out briefly, shortly into breakouts to have just a smaller setting to share and listen to each other a little bit. Then we'll come back and we'll take any questions and debrief all together a little bit. But in a moment, I'll open up 2 breakout rooms. You'll be in 3 or 4. Take the chance first when you're out. So you'll have 15 minutes. So take the chance first to do a little introduction round. It's an opportunity to also make connection with maybe folks that you haven't met before. So quick check-in, introductions, and then just very simple, take turns sharing from that reflection, from those questions. And after all have shared, if you have time left, just open up for dialogue. Pick up on what you heard from each other. Just continue for a few more minutes. And practice active listening, get curious about each other. This is as much about sharing from your own as learning from others' reflections. So take that opportunity. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to have some good conversation. I could see a little bit of it because there was a little bit happening in the chat, and actually Marge and Rustis ended up back in the main room with me, so I got a little bit to listen in. But I want to open up actually and hear I'll just open up, and anybody who'd like to share a reflection, something that came up for you in the first round individually, or something that sparked your interest from the conversation you had now. What is sort of bubbling up that feels interesting and insightful to you? And it could also be that that's a question. So I know there was one, Kaya, you posted a question before we went into the breakout. I don't know if you got into that question with your teammates or if we want to bring it in here, but we just spent a few minutes now kind of opening up together back as a full group. So yeah, please, anyone, go ahead. You can unmute. In fact, Kaya, maybe I invite you first, and just with whatever still is top of mind for you.
Actually, I wanted to comment that we a little bit touched the same question I put in the chat, but we ended up with it like acknowledging that in the areas or fields where there's more money flowing or floating, there's more cooperation as well. And in the areas, for example, where there is not so much money, also like the study fields, like the industry is in some areas is more rich and in some industries not so rich. So there's also less cooperation, and in a way, maybe it's because of people. There are lack of people, and they are overworked or something. So we didn't actually come up with anything very good. We saw that, for example, or at least it seems to me that for example, there's also more cooperation with industry and university. For example, in the areas where this labor market is quite competitive, because the industry is more interested of very knowledgeable students or skillful students. So they already jump into the university studies, so they can pick the best people already before they enter to the labor market. But at the same time, it even goes to the teacher training more, because those schools, for example, see that, oh, those students who are studying for teacher training, they are very skillful. I will invite them to my school, for example. But then there are other areas maybe where it's not so much lack of, for example, the competence in the labor market is not that high, or the money, or somehow, and then there's less cooperation. So we still have this problem. And maybe, what I for myself learned or understood during this reflection was that I actually, as I'm working in a back office, that I also should understand better, what are the industry developments, because we have been discussing that what are those digital competencies of students they should gain as addition of their curriculum, and to understand how we can support it, what competencies should be more supported. Then it would be helpful for me to understand better how different industry fields are developing, so what to bring in to our studies. But now I'm quiet and listen to the others as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaya. What else? Either from from alongside Kaya in that group, or from the other group. What else is bubbling to the surface?
Okay, I tried to put in hello. I was together with Magdalena from South Poland, and she's teaching was it geology? I think I understood. And she was thinking that she joined this webinar in order to know about the topic, and also to start to think about how to do partnerships with industry in their field better. So she said maybe the first step would be to move towards it, is to sit down with students and start to think how to do it among their curriculum. And I'm interested about educational development of our faculty. And I was thinking about, as in, I work for the Art Academy in Estonia, and here fine arts, design, architecture is the main point, and maybe the educational development hasn't been in focus. But one of the points could be to co-create or make learning partnerships in the field of curriculum development or course development, and maybe among faculty themselves, but also maybe having people from the field in that process involved. I guess you're already doing it, Alex, but here in ECA, but I think it would be a good example. So thank you.
Well, there's over somewhere in ECA, there's a good little case study and some colleagues of yours that you can connect with. But thank you. That's thank you, Christina. The really really insightful perspectives. And actually I'm curious. So you were saying you were with Magdalena, right? And Magdalena, I'd love to hear just a little bit more of where you were going to from your perspective, and because Christina referred to that idea of sitting down with students, exploring with them. Can you say more about what you were thinking about?
Hello. Fortunately, now I can see all of us, because during the conversation with Christina, I had a black screen all the time, so it was a curious situation. But we can change our ideas and think about the problems were asking for. So Christina said that I'm a geologist. Yes, I'm a geologist. Exactly, I work on the organic petrology, and I see some maybe proposals, some ideas of industry partnership in the neighborhood of our university, because I work at the University of Silesia in Katowice, and this region, Silesian region, is I think the most industrial region in the southern Poland. Or what else? Maybe some collaboration with laboratories and research institutes. I think about the mutual projects between, for example, laboratories and research institutes and academic staff and students, about mutual terms of diploma for students. When I think about myself, I see some possibilities of mutual work with international industry connected to my research field, organic petrology, actually.
Great. I love to hear it. Sounds like there are ideas and possibilities bubbling up for you, and that's a little bit. Yeah, hold on to that. We're going to do one more step after this. We're going to explore that perspective. So, yeah, let's hear maybe one or two more. What about, so Marge, do you want to share what sticks with you from the conversation you and Ristis had?
Thank you. I had nice conversation with Ristis from Lithuania. If I remember correctly, he's a professor of history, and we talked much about methods, how people learn, and how the new challenges about different type of reading. I believe all read still, but not from books anymore so much. And classical text, if it's not learned very well in previous education, for example, just in general schools, and seems to me, I like to be a person who can help the gap between this general education and university. If young persons know more how to learn and how they learn and understand that part, then it's easier to be more aware of making choice about curriculum in universities and plan themselves their education. Maybe this was the short conclusion.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to come in with a reflection or an insight from the conversation? I also want to invite in questions. So I don't know, Kaya, if you want to, I don't know if you want to bring your question back into the space, or if anyone else has something that is sitting with them from what something that was sparked from when I was speaking earlier, or something that has come up for you as you've been reflecting. Any questions that you want to bring into the space that, both I can give perspective on, but also others could share. Kaya, do you want to voice the question that you asked before in the chat, and we can spend 2 minutes on that?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Basically, what I was wondering or thinking or wanted to ask also from other universities' perspective or experiences is that how to bring industry around the table so that they would be ready to participate or give their contribution to the study area, and also how it seems for me that to administrate from the instructor's perspective or curriculum lead's perspective it's like quite a lot of work to bring this industry around the table. So how to create those good connections and and motivate the industry to come around the table. So maybe someone has good practices. It's like one thing like is that when you have like maybe good connections with people who have like are alumni of your own curriculum, that you can bring in them, but at the same time maybe you like want to widen the area of collaboration.
Totally. I mean, and yeah, as you say, that can be out to everyone. I can offer just a couple of ideas come to mind on that question, and I think one, you know, when it comes to the challenge of, okay, this takes time and energy, and that is scarce. That can be scarce. I think something that I've learned and that's important, especially when it comes to that sort of network building, identifying the people to work with, getting people around the table, is to really focus on where the willingness and motivation is to engage and partner. So if you can, you know, scan the field and identify a good cross-section of people that we might like to work with, that would be interesting, valuable. So, okay, you've got your alumni, you've got other people who, you know, have some connection, you've got more people that you can find in all sorts of ways. And okay, you make the long list of people who could potentially be, you know, great partners for, say, I don't know, curriculum development work, right? To get people around the table and get them to engage. But then putting the focus on working with those where there is natural motivation and willingness, because that will create ease and you know, less work in terms of what does it take to get, you know, to get that person to collaborate. Because what I've discovered, what I've seen over time is that there are just ranges of kind of attitude and willingness. Some people, you know, maybe you could get their time if you really work and accommodate and you know, ask in just the right way. Others are super willing and find intrinsic motivation and find it really enriching to be a partner in that way, and will show up and will contribute and will be really motivated to do so. So I think applying, you know, of course it's always going to take, you know, work and coordination to create any kind of partnership, but I think having you know, when that time and energy is scarce, having a filter of, okay, how can I sort of, you know, find where the ease is in these relationships, where the willingness is, and you know, bring together that group. And also, and we're going to talk about this in a couple minutes, but sort of what, you know, starting small and starting somewhere, right? So, okay, wouldn't it be great to have a big round table with 35 specialists from the field? Okay, maybe that would be the ideal. Maybe 5 specialists from the field would also be enough to get started or do it the first time, and then maybe we can like learn and grow from that place. So I think also emphasizing the idea of you know, starting small, making it something manageable, and not necessarily, you know, needing to do the full version of the ideas that we might dream up of what it can look like, but starting somewhere. And then it's also easier, I think, to iterate on something, you know, repeat and scale slightly something that already has you know, a template and a proof that this creates some kind of value. So that would be another idea. Want to go to this idea of where to start, or how to make it happen. So and I think the challenge that you expressed, Kaya, about what does it take in terms of resources and time and energy and money, are always going to be present, and that's a real, very meaningful constraint. But I think that, one of the keys is to start small and start somewhere and take an experimental approach. Can you find the one person to work with, or can you find the first micro version of the partnership that you think would be a really valuable one? What is the kind of experimental starting point that you can take? And as a way to sort of support and nudge you into starting small and starting somewhere, I want to offer you a simple framework, a kind of thinking tool, and then give you just a few minutes, a little bit of time to kind of get started with this thinking tool. And so I call this learning partnership prototyping. And so this is your 10-minute process to sketch out the idea of, okay, based on what your motivation, curiosity, particular challenge might be, how could you quickly sketch out the rough sketch of a possible learning partnership within your context that you could then start a conversation with a colleague, or begin to put together the shape of it to propose to someone else, or even just make it clear to yourself and get some clarity in your thinking about what would this mean and how could it look. So this is like 7, I think, or 8 prompts that you think through and make notes about as a way to prototype the idea of a learning partnership. So kind of the starting point is your what if, your initial rough idea or curious question, the thing that you're kind of thinking about, okay, that could be valuable, that could be interesting. This could be like a word or a couple words that are just your starting point, your way into what might be. Then you'd kind of break it down. Okay, so you get into these questions. They don't have to be in this order, but this is just how I've organized them here. So thinking through, okay, what's the challenge that needs addressing? What is the actual kind of pain point or challenge that actually is there and that is a bit painful or urgent and needs some attention? On the flip side, what opportunities can you think about? What assets and opportunities could you tap into as you start thinking about what a partnership might be? And then the partnership possibilities. You could start here. This, might be a natural starting point, but I think sometimes, identifying the challenge and the opportunities is like the fertile ground that the partnership possibilities can grow from. So again, it doesn't have to be in this order, but here's how we unfolds on the page. Who might you work with? And what forms could it potentially take? So this is where you start to dream into, could it be a roundtable of industry specialists? Could it be a collaboration with students? Could it be a shaping of a future course that doesn't exist yet? What could it look like? Who might be involved? What would the benefits and value be? What good could come from such a partnership for the students, for the institution, for the partners? Starting to think through, how would you describe what value, what good would come from such a partnership? And then who should be involved, both directly and indirectly? So who are the key players? Again, when you're sketching, you can just kind of do the quick bullet list, but just making sure you're thinking about the who is involved, maybe beyond the most obvious. Okay, the partners and the students, but also okay, but the other school administrators or other parts of the community. I don't know. Thinking through the direct and indirect stakeholders. And then what would be the first steps? Okay, what are the immediate next steps to get this moving? Again, starting small and starting somewhere. So not making the whole action plan, not designing the full set of steps, but rather, okay, what are the next conversations to have? What are the next emails to write to kind of get the ball rolling and see, could this be something, right? So in drafting out something like this, you create clear thinking for yourself, and you give frames to this as in a way that could be put to someone else and start moving the process forward. And again, in the spirit of learning by doing, I want you to try this out. I want you to do a little quick, rapid version of this. either you sketch it on a piece of paper, or I'll put a document version in the chat that you can open up and do on your desktop. But taking a few minutes to try this out, starting with your what if and seeing if you can get through a few of these green headlines over the course of a few minutes, and seeing what does that spark for you. I'd love to just hear from a few of like what is emerging and coming up as you're doing this little structured thinking process. Are you uncovering some new possibilities? Is this helping you clarify, or just maybe not? Maybe it's whatever it is. I'd like to hear from a few. What's happening as you've been working now a little bit? Anyone who'd like to share?
You can.
Marge, yeah.
Shortly. Very good plan, and those keywords was very nice to feel and think very roughly and quickly, and I could focus on the same subject, that if we create a bridge between the general studies in basic schools and before people going to university, then challenge is that teachers are all very busy in everyday duties, and but other hand, direct speech and personal contacts, and from personal level to wider social society groups could be helpful, and awareness of planning the further education, and make goal is made learning better, to design the learning route better than since then. Maybe that's it.
Great. Thank you, Marge. I'd love to hear just like briefly from each one. I think we have time to kind of do a round. And again, on any whatever this is, wherever this is taking you. So all different kinds of perspectives are welcome. But why don't we do like this, Marge? Can you kind of pass on and just pass on the word to someone to go next, and we'll do a chain like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. My conversation partner Rustis could be.
Rustis, yes.
Yes, I'm here. So we're doing actually such type of partnerships since, I don't know, 10 years or more. At least in my career, I have been engaged in such type of partnerships with various people from academia, from business, and really, it's so on the screen it looks very theoretical, but in practice, so I never use such type of tables. Simply, when I saw that there is a problem, for example, I need some practical ideas how to apply knowledge that we got in some fields of history, yes, in tourism environment, for example, to work as a guide. So I'm inviting person from tourism business, from a tourist firm that needs guides, okay, that works with guides, and these students just simply talk with this person from tourism business. And actually, I do not see here any problem in inviting such type of professionals. Simply, I'm calling people that I know, I'm looking. So it takes time, of course. Simply take a phone and call, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe they're readdressing you to other people, and finally you find. So I don't think it's a problem about finding these professionals who would come to speak with students, because many of these people, who work in business, they are interested in finding young people and in sharing the knowledge. And so it's the problem that I see here, the biggest problem, is again is motivation of students. So very, very frequently it happens that I need to invite students, to ask students, to push students to come to such meetings, because they do not care much about that. So anyway, so this type of partnerships, this type of meetings, of course, they are good. They are good, and they bring a huge value to studies and to all communications. They're good for both sides, for business, for specialists, for experts, and for students. So it's good. It's very theoretical that you wrote here, but simply what happens, you can do it in a room, in a university room. You can do it in a cafe. You can buy beer to this professional. You can invite students. So there are many possibilities to do this, and you're just choosing what is better for you. What is your mood, and what students will like.
Sure. Absolutely. No, and I guess also if you're quite experienced and have done this a lot, then I can understand how it sort of feels very put into boxes. And I think the idea is a little bit to give a bit of a thinking structure. Maybe if this is something that is maybe newer as a practice of building and thinking about partnerships, and also just some maybe helpful reminders of some of the aspects to be thinking about, not only jumping into that middle box about like, okay, what are we going to do, but also, okay, what is the challenge we're trying to address, what are the range of opportunities we can tackle, who really should be involved, some of the things that in some cases might get a little bit overlooked in the process of creating something, if it's done quickly and ad hoc. So no, but thank you, Ristis, for your reflections. Who do you pass it to?
Let it be Christina. Okay.
Right, I was reflecting more about faculty and faculty development, and I was thinking about in the context of curriculum development, that how to use learning partnerships in curriculum design or curriculum workshops. And the need is, or the challenge is, that some curricula need more coherence and also learning more, not only from industry partnerships, but also from students as well. What do they experience? It's like part of user experience, or how do they feel? I was your workshop helped me to clarify my thoughts, and maybe one of my next steps is to discuss it together with our educational development work group, that maybe we can do a small curriculum workshops, like design a format what could be used in curricula where this kind of reflection together with faculty. Also, one of the problems is that faculty are scattered around, not so many full-time working faculty in NECA, but a lot of people from the field are hired in order to teach design or architecture or fine arts. So faculty, students, and maybe more people in the field, but they could be also part of teaching staff on that curriculum. So that is my thought I was playing with or testing your workshop on.
Thank you. Well, if as you said, if this session helped you clarify your thinking a little bit, then that's then I'm very happy to hear that. That feels like it's best for me. Thank you, Christina. Who do you pass on to? I think yeah, Kaya or Magda.
Kaya, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, actually, I'm maybe in connection a little bit with Christina with the topics because I'm more also not maybe subject specifically thinking, and I also must admit that maybe this session helped me to just to take a little bit of time and to think really like, okay, yes, there are those the digital competencies of the learner, and like, yeah, because we are like creating or framing this digital learning strategy and like trying to set to understand what are the focuses there. And I know that I have to somehow think through the part of like what are the learners' digital competencies we enhance with the curriculums. And but it has been so vague for me, and now maybe I took also some of the ideas from here. First of all, of course, I have to also get the curriculum leads in the boat. And then I was thinking that actually you have to be pretty convincing when you go to speak with them, because they have so many other topics, and like to like also like beforehand to going to speak with them about the whole idea, like to like think through what would be this their motivation and what would like talk with them or speak with them with, so what would be my message to them to get them involved. And yeah, like involving like curriculum heads, like to think big. And because I was thinking that okay, I should understand like what are the curriculum industry developments, but we have so many different curriculums in the different areas, so I definitely won't be able to understand the developments of all the fields. So, but the curriculum leads, I assume, have the vision and understanding of the developments of the field, so they could be able to reflect this area. But I was also thinking that actually, like, based on your encouragement, is it like not the vice versa word, I hope, encouragement, that actually, at least it start out with, for example, some of the alumni who are already working in the field, and they can also reflect me better what is happening in the field based on my own understanding, because I have more also this pedagogical or andragogical understanding, not the design or architecture fields, but I don't know that much. So also like, yeah, just even like to start out with few alumni would be also the step to better understand like what are the digital competencies that later on the graduates need. But I was also thinking that actually we have to be able to then make some kind of like generalizations for the university, because you probably are not able to like focus to every curriculum or field, but as a university you have to also make some generalizations, because this is not the main subject of the curriculum. And I think that I was quite messy at the moment, but if it like but yeah, sure, it like at least started my like flow of ideas where to go and how to go. Yeah, and I can turn my order of speaking to Magdalena then maybe.
Thank you. In this time of our working, I was typing something in this paper sheet in this document Alex sent us. So maybe I speak about the answer I typed on. So initial rough idea or curious question. Well, my question is how to join the academic education with employers' expectation at our university, because I think it's a huge problem. Where can we find the answer, how to do it? This is the next thing. The opportunities. I think it's I see the opportunity with the synergy of experience of the academic staff. This is the first, vicinity of industry in the region, Silesian region, so extreme industrial region as well, and students' expectations. If we think about partnership possibilities, I think it's a good idea to have mutual projects, education on future employees. What could come from such a partnership? I think it's a good future for graduate students. because they have a great opportunity to find the job they think of or dream of. A new education program or improvement of already made. Who should be involved directly or indirectly? I think all of us, administration, university authorities, and staff students should be engaged in this process. And what are the most important next steps to get this moving? Searching, I think. This is the next step.
Thank you, Magdalena. Lovely to hear you talk us through a full, the full page, and it sounds like that was bringing some structure and clarity to your thinking. Let me just check. I'm not sure. Were you more just in the background as a supporting, or did you also do the exercise? And would you like to share any reflection? Okay, maybe more just in the background with us. Good. Okay. Then we heard from all the rest, I think, and yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's you know, I love to hear that is, you know, sparking some thinking, creating some ideas, making some connections. That's, you know, that's the most I could hope for in you know, in facilitating a process like this. So and you know, I really encourage you to take that next step, right? So to take this forward in some way, however small, but if there's something in there, especially if there's something in there that feels, you know, purposeful, that feels motivating, then make sure to move that forward in some way. We're going to move toward wrapping up, so maybe I just open up before I kind of go into a bit of a closing, and just invite if there were any other reflections or any other questions, anything else that you want to ask or put into the space before we start to end. Okay. What I want to offer by way of kind of wrapping up, apart from just appreciation for you being here, for you, you know, stepping in and engaging and being part of this process, is if you want to continue the conversation, if you want to use me as a little bit of a sounding board, you know, I know that in this setting we have really disparate fields and focuses and roles. You know, we've got like geology and history and art and design and everything kind of together. So we're working a little bit in the kind of general space where these things can overlap. But if you were sort of, you know, something sparked for you today, if you feel like it would be valuable, then I'm happy to offer, you know, a bit of my time to have a follow-up chat, to be a bit of a sounding board. If you're sitting with something that started today that you want to take forward a little bit, and you think I could be, you know, helpful in answering a question or giving feedback or anything like that, then I'm going to make sure that my email is shared with you in the follow-up. And yeah, as you can sense, I love this stuff. I find it, you know, super interesting and meaningful, and always curious to hear what you know, what different people are working on. So please feel free to reach out and connect with me if you would like to. And I think with that, I'll just sort of say thanks. Maybe what we could do is end a little bit as we started with a quick checkout. We'll do this in the chat just to make it quick. But if you could sort of, yeah, end the session today by putting into the chat, you know, one thing you're taking with you from the workshop, an idea, a feeling, an insight. What is one thing that is sticking with you from the process today? And put that in the chat, and that'll be our way to just close out the session and the process. Yes, I guess with that, I will just again just express my appreciation to you. You know, something like this, which is participatory and conversational, it's always great to have a group that is, you know, leaned in and ready to step in, and you certainly did. So thank you for that, and enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'm sure, you know, we will cross paths in different ways again in the future. So take care, everyone, and see you again soon.